All right, friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to all things tactically related, but especially advanced battlefield command in Bannerlord. And today we are going to run a series of infantry tactics episodes, experiments. The reason they're experiments is that some of these I'm just going to film or narrate live, and we'll see how we do. Now, most people associate, of course, Battanians with the Battanian Fiend champions, but I actually love their infantry. And in these battles here, we're going to try to decimate a Northern Empire force, an Imperial force. Now I'm showing you the units here. We're using all the same units essentially on the same sides, and what I mean by that is both sides have access to all the same troop levels. In other words, these, from a standpoint of skill and strength, these two armies should be equal. Now this first battle here, all I'm doing is showing you that our army is weaker than them, and the easiest way to show that is just to have our units charge, effectively allow these two different infantry divisions to clash, and then watch the results. Now what we're going to be doing in this episode is progressively increasing the difficulty of the tactics performed on each of these battlefields, right? This first one obviously is what a lot of guys do. F1, F3 for the loss is what you should write, right? FTL, not FTW, because it just doesn't work. Now we have 10% cavalry and 10% archers for both sides, but again, we're not giving ourselves the Battanian Fiend champions. We are skipping the tier 6 line for both kingdoms. The Imperial Elite Cataphract and the Battanian Fiend champs are going to sit this one out. Now, as you can see here, from the power bar and this little bar here, this little screen here, we are getting crushed by just using charge with our infantry, right? What that means in this episode, in these battles to come, is that you cannot just rely on brute force to win this battle. And the reason is because we're outnumbered by about 7%. The enemy has about or exactly 30 more troops than us. All right, so let's start with very basic tactics here. These are the kind of tactics that I think even relatively new players are going to be able to perform. Now we are going to use 6 divisions here. I might even split my cav for 7 divisions, but we're not going to have a tremendous amount of movement and or micromanagement of our units during the battle. Now what I want you to observe here is we're going to set up the 7th as a skirmisher division, right? We get that by setting it up with shields and javelins. The 4th division, the 1st division is essentially going to hold the middle, right? And they're going to be our strong spear shield infantry, in other words, our defensive infantry. And all we're going to do is sort of form a U shape here, right? The 1st division right in the center of our battle screen, the 6th off to our right, and our 4th corps we will put in a big long line off to this left side here. Let me just drag these guys through here. And what it does is it forms, as you can see, sort of a U shape, or it almost looks like a bucket, right? With 2 angular infantry units in a shield wall flanking this 1st division. Now we're actually going to start this like this, without flanking or without being in a line at the beginning. We're going to start in this flanking almost bucket shape. And if the enemy doesn't come straight into our bucket, we will simply move it a little bit. A lot of times, though, if you can sort of aim this, and the enemy has a lot of infantry, they will simply run right towards the center of your screen and allow themselves to enter this envelopment process. Now I am going to use the RTS mod a lot in these episodes, not every episode, not every battle. This is all one episode, I guess I should say. But some of these battles, or at least a battle or two, we will fight on foot. I'm doing this though because this has the most illustrative value for guys trying to learn what the fuck is going on here. So you can see their giant infantry block. I expect it to shield wall soon. I'm kind of surprised they're not. Although, actually, you know what? They're already in a shield wall. I missed the movement because they were probably in the trees there. Now look what the enemy's done. They've run right into the middle. Our skirmishers are on the side here throwing javelins. That's why you see the skirmishers racking up kills. Now that the enemy's in the middle here, F1, F3, right? All we did is in this second battle, the same thing we were going to do in the first battle, or that we did do in the first battle, F1, F3, we just put the enemy in a vulnerable position, right? In other words, this is a formation that any new player should be able to emulate or copy, and then as soon as the enemy enters the bucket, so to speak, in fact, we could call this tactic like kicking the enemy's bucket or something like that, right? It's not wildly successful, but I think we're going to win. It's close. And the key here is, of course, your forces both envelop and flank the enemy on multiple sides. So your skirmishers are throwing javelins a little bit, and then, of course, your infantry collapses on their infantry. Now, it's very close. In fact, so close to call that I won't say whether or not we won or not, but it was clearly better than that first battle. All right, so back to our menu here. We're going to speed things up for you. All of this stuff is all the same. I'm not going to change anything, of course, between the episodes. I'm not trying to trick anybody here, right? These are just basic tactics that you guys can all use the custom battle to perform for yourself, right? There's no smoke and mirrors here. We're just using military tactics. Now, these tactics, of course, have been adapted for Bannerlord. People talk about it all the time. Wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. How come you're not charging with your cavalry? The bottom line is that we have to play with the game mechanics that are presented to us. And I know some guys are like, well, use RBM. It favors cavalry. A lot of guys either don't want to use RBM or on a console, and they can't use RBM. So that's why I don't use RBM for the majority of our episodes here. Of course, we will feature the realistic battle mod. If you've never heard of that abbreviation before, we will use that some because it is a superior mod to vanilla, but I'm not going to use it as our baseline here. That would be just a big injustice to all the console players who would also like to use tactics. All right, so we're going to do very similar stuff here in this episode, just with slight twists, right? What I'm essentially going to be doing in these battles, and I may end up running 4 or 5, we'll kind of see. I am ab-libbing here. I am shooting from the hip, choose your metaphor, right? Each of these battles, we're essentially going to add another difficulty wrinkle. And that is because once you master the basics, once you could set up a bucket formation and collapse upon the enemy, most of us anyways want to develop and get better, right? Just like in real life, you don't want to do the same job your whole life. You don't want to have the same education level. You don't want to have the same persona and the same faults as a human being. We want to continually improve, and so that's what we're going to try to do here in each of these fights. Now you see the bucket formation here, right? Very similar. The 4th on the left, the 1st in the middle, and the 6th on the right. Now notice our cav wings, right? We are using those as screens. All I'm doing is putting those there to lessen the shock assault from the enemy cavalry. Enemy cavalry will come charging in just like that, and it slows down, actually killed a few of their horsemen as our guys threw javelins at them. Now here's the wrinkle we're going to do in this version. I'm forming the 1st division that's in our middle into a square, and I'm going to feed it to the enemy here, right? It's almost like a big box of cereal. We're just shoving it at the enemy, and most of the enemy forces are enveloping that square, right? 367 guys. They probably have 250 attacking the square. Now they have some guys attacking our flanks, but a lot of those guys are also throwing javelins. Now again, just like the previous episode, and I should have gone a little slower there, we have engaged the F1, F3. So this is almost identical to the bucket formation with one exception. We fed the enemy the square, and now we're in F1, F3. Now the square will attack in F1, F3. In a perfect world, what I would say to you is form that square defensively again, right? Once they're in that square shape, your other units are attacking while that square is sort of holding out. That's the key to this tactic. That's why it works. You end up distracting a lot of the enemy. They're pounding on a square. In a square formation, your troops are holding up their shield. They've got their sword. And the idea is that they're in a highly defensible, strong, formidable formation that's very hard for the enemy to break down. Now, the first battle we lost charging. The second battle was close. I didn't run it all the way out because I don't want this to be a 45-minute episode. But this third battle, all we've done is take our kick the bucket strategy here, kick the bucket tactic, and then added a square, and we are highly successful in this battle, right? I would say we're going to have 100 plus units left. This will be sort of our scoreboard for each of these episodes. Now, any of these battles we win is a success because we're outnumbered here by about 30 forces. Right, so that's definitely a success. And again, all we're going to do here with each one of these is simply add a little bit of a wrinkle to each of these battles. I'm trying not to use terrain too much because that's like a whole separate episode, how to use terrain with infantry, and it's something that I will be working on over the upcoming weeks. These are just meant to be infantry versus infantry battles in the open. Now, anybody who's saying it doesn't make any sense, it's not realistic, a lot of infantry. Actually, it is, because when you play a campaign early on, a lot of your battles will be 60 to 80% infantry for both sides. So these tactics are highly relevant for those situations. Now, this is a much more complex tactic. This is the kind of thing that military generals have done throughout the years. There's a very famous general in the 1700s named Prussian the Great that used this. This is called an oblique order. An oblique order is essentially just overloading one side of the enemy formation and then rolling up their flank. And I will show you that in more detail. But this was used all the way back in the Greek wars of the year like 300 BC. So as you can see, we've got lots of formations here, right? We actually are using all 8 divisions. That's, like I said, we're advancing the difficulty of these some. We're going to use our cav wings on the side here. Now, this is not that complicated of a tactic, even though you're using all 8 formations. Your 1st and 7th are basically going to be somewhat static divisions. Those guys are going to be absorbing the enemy attack. And your 3rd, 6th, and what else are we using? The 3rd division here, those are shock troops. We will be flanking the enemy on the enemy's left flank, on our right flank, right? We're overloading that side. And the purpose of this is to essentially destroy one side of the enemy's formation and then have those guys start to bore in on the rest of the troops. So the 1st and the 7th here are holding a defensive posture, where the 4th is lower level infantry, the 3rd is shock troops, and then the 6th is skirmishers, and those guys will be plowing around the enemy's left flank, our flank, as they engage. Of course, we got our archers behind everybody here, elevated. This is nothing new, but this strategy here is highly effective in other games, games like Rome Total War, and it should be highly effective in Bannerlord. I say should be because I don't actually try this a lot in Bannerlord. I have had some success. I have made several episodes that cover historical battles, like the Battle of Cannae, but this is a military strategy that has worked over the years, and the same principles should apply here to Bannerlord, right? We are going to crush the enemy's left flank, and once they're crushed, as long as our 1st and 7th don't completely break apart, the other 3 infantry divisions are just going to eat up their formation like a hungry movie watcher with a big, huge red ropes, right? They're just going to devour them from one end to the other. So we'll square this 7th Corps, right, and basically feed it to the enemy. And again, just like that previous battle, what we're trying to do there is attract a lot of attention, right? We've already, you can see, we've got an offset formation, and that's where the entire oblique concept comes from, right? It means attacking essentially from the side. Now, unfortunately, my skirmishers are being told to charge by accident. That's not what I want to happen. And I think the 4th Division is also doing it. This is a difficulty that's mostly applicable to the RTS mod. In regular Bannerlord, that shouldn't happen to you very often. Now you can see our forces here on the right are sort of swirling around the enemy's left, right? Our right flank. In fact, I'm manually controlling a couple of those divisions so that they sort of swallow the enemy up. Once they're there, then they can be told to charge, right? The square you really want to hold in place because it's attracting a lot of attention, and those guys are doing their job of surviving, right? That's the main job of units in a square. But in this case, of course, this left side of the enemy flank, our right flank, is now boring in on the enemy. You could see there, like, it's just a mob of guys going crazy, eating up the enemy's formation from this side to where they're attacking our square. The 1st Division did hold out. And so now this side is really starting to bore in on them, and the enemy's being surrounded, right? This is the same concept as the bucket formation. The enemy is now fighting us on multiple flanks, and predictably the results are positive for us. Now let's see how positive, right? That first one, the bucket strategy, was close. Once we added the square, we had 100 and some troops. And this battle, it looks like we might be approaching 200 troops left on the battlefield, which is awesome, right? Think of this, we're outnumbered, and we had 210 troops survive this battle with this tactic, right? With this oblique order. It's famous for a reason, right? And that's because it works. All right, so we're back to the custom battle menu, and let's get crazy, right? Bob Ross, the painter with the big afro, he's a freaking great guy. If you don't know who Bob Ross is, he's just a painter, the nicest guy you've ever seen on TV. He did a lot of instructional painting videos. I guess we're doing some painting videos here too. We're just painting the battlefield with blood. So let's try a little variation on this. Let's use first-person perspective. We will use advanced tactics. And we're going to bore in on the enemy on both flanks here, right? This is a full envelopment process. This is very similar to what Hannibal did at the Battle of Cannae. We're going to have two different divisions that are essentially holding the enemy's attention. Let's see, we'll use the... I think we'll probably try to use the 1st and 7th again. I know this is very complicated. Of course, that's why it's at the end of the episode. What I'm doing this for is to really show you what is possible in Bannerlord once you have advanced tactics. Now, you want to order these divisions correctly, right? You see this 3rd division? I want lots and lots of shock troops in there, right? Your shock troops, your two-handed weapon guys, no shields, so they need to be paired with units that have a shield. But once they're used properly, they are devastating. So we're going to have the 1st and 7th effectively be our distractionary squares, our defensive units. Think of them as it's you and your friend fighting two guys on a battlefield. Your friend has 2 shields. He has no weapons, and you have 2 weapons. Well, of course, you'd want the enemy 2 opponents to attack your friend, and then you carve the enemy up with your 2 weapons. That's effectively what we're doing here, right? This 1st division and this 7th division will be in a square like this. There's too many skirmishers in there. I'm going to tinker with the settings here just a little bit. The rude sort of model that Bannerlord gives you is I was going to say rude. It's actually crude. It's rude too, but it's also crude. It's not very effective at dividing your units optimally. What I want is mostly spear and shield infantry here in the 7th, and I'm having a little bit difficulty. I think I need to take the high quality troops off. Now, the reason I put high quality troops on here is I want to make sure they survive. If there are weaker troops in there, squares will still get devoured, but I think we'll roll with that. So we're going to have the 1st and 7th hold the enemy's attention in a square. We will move them back, and they will be a little bit apart from each other. That way the enemy doesn't just glob around both of them. Then what we're going to do over here on the left is have the 4th Corps, which is weaker skirmishers, and the 3rd Corps behind them, shock troops. And then on the right flank here, where the enemy has their weapon out, we will have our best skirmishers, right? That'll be our wildlings and whatnot, throwing javelins into the side of the enemy as they attack our 1st and 7th division. Now, it's going to require patience, right? We're effectively allowing the enemy to attack and outnumber 2 of our units here, the 1st and the 7th, while we wait and get our other units into position. While the 4th throws javelins, while the 6th Corps of elite javelins and wildlings throws their javelins, we need to be patient here. And this is difficult for people as a commander. Hell, it'll be difficult for me because you're watching your troops die. At the beginning of this battle, and you can look for this, you will probably see quite a bit of red death spam and be like, well, your strategy sucks, dude, it's not working. But I think once we bring this 4th and 3rd Corps in, right, we're going to bring those in on the enemy's left flank and the 6th on the enemy's right. I think we are going to have dramatic success, right? The bar we're trying to beat here is 200 kills from not 200 kills, 200 survivors from the last battle, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to do that. Now, this battle I'm going to fight on foot because I get people all the time that say, well, that's great, you're doing tactics. Apologize here for the couple of UI changes I got to make. Guys are like, that's great, you guys, you can do tactics with the RTS mod, but you just said you're not using RBM because I'm on a console. Well, duh, if I'm on a console, I also don't have the RTS mod. So we're going to fight this battle on foot. Now, just for courtesy's sake here, for brevity's sake, I am speeding this initial stage up. I will slow it down, of course, once the enemy gets close. 150 units away seems like a fair number. So again, the 3rd and the 4th Corps, we're going to be moving to our right. That's weak skirmishers and shock troops. In front of me is the 1st and 7th Division. I'm going to reposition these archers just so they have a little better line of sight. This is the 1st, that is the 7th. Very soon we'll be squaring those guys. The 4th and the 3rd over there, with the 4th in front of the 3rd, that's important. Our 2 cav wings, like these other battles, our cav wings are just out there. They have one goal, basically intercept the enemy cavalry and prevent their cavalry from really fucking with us in the battle. Now, they are also serving another purpose. They are absorbing arrows, right? Our cavalry in shield wall is going to be shot at by the enemy arrows, and that's a small, significant benefit here. All right, so the enemy vanguard is close. Let's start moving these units a little bit further away. You do not want them to attack your flanks here. So we will now square the 1st and the 7th, and we're going to put these guys, I would say, about 30 yards apart from each other, right, give or take. Again, I have one big square and one small square, and that's very purposeful because I want this weaker square absorbing less attention. The 6th Corps, we're going to stretch way out here, and I'm actually going to join. I have to join, my troops on one of these sides here. We're going to stand behind our skirmishers here, and look at the death spam already, right? Our skirmishers are working, but now our squares are on their own, right? Our guys here are throwing javelins. Actually, the screen is pretty green, but now the enemy's charging and rampaging. You can see them in aviatons bobbing up and down over there. Now it's time for us to spring our trap here, right? The 4th and 3rd Corps gets pulled towards me. I'm moving cavalry out there just to sort of give the enemy archers even more of a distractionary target. Our 6th Corps here, these guys are throwing javelins. We're moving these guys in for the kill. I can throw a few pitiful little throwing axes here and do 20 damage. And I'm letting my javelins work. They're still throwing javelins. I still see javelins flying in here. Now that they're getting close, these guys can be sent to charge. Now you can't see the other side, but that 4th and 3rd Corps is undoubtedly plowing their way towards us. Now we send the 6th Corps, and the enemy's very much surrounded here, right? They're attacking the square. Those guys are being defensive. Here comes on the other side of the battle the 3rd and 4th Corps, right? So these guys are obliterating everything in sight. We can have all the units charged at this stage. And our 6th, 3rd, and 4th now come behind the enemy here and just start enveloping them, right? They're completely surrounded by our troops. We even have a few cavalry here cutting through. And look at the death spam now, right? It's massively in our favor. And I think that was it. I think they just routed. We will now prepare to kill their archers, although at this stage their archers may even rout. Because even though we are badly outnumbered here, their entire infantry division just melted away, right? This advanced strategy just completely destroyed that infantry division. So we see we got here, right? The previous bars were 100 and 200, and very linearly, we have over 300 survivors here. In other words, what is that, about 70% survivors in a battle? We are outnumbered with these infantry tactics. So hopefully this gives you some inspiration, fellas. Hopefully I can continue to inspire you guys to use tactics, because there's two real reasons I think you want to use tactics. And the first is actually more important, I think, than the second. The first is that it's fun. It actually gives your brain a lot of positive chemicals when you succeed at something where you had a plan, executed the plan, and then it worked, right? That's a very important thing for the human brain. This is productivity. I don't know exactly the chemical. Somebody would probably say it's a combination of serotonin and dopamine. I will let you biologists and anesthesiologists and whatever ologists tell me actually what the fuck I'm talking about here. But I do know that it's good for your brain. It makes you feel like you accomplished something. And I think in Bannerlord, that's and in life, that's very important. In fact, it's much more important in life than Bannerlord. Nevertheless, I may, down the road, I might be a life coach, but for now, I'm just a Bannerlord coach. We are trying to help you guys get better at tactics. The second reason is, of course, demonstrated in this episode, and that it's that tactics work. We tried F1, F3, we lost. We used the bucket. It worked so-so. We used the bucket with the square. We beat the enemy. We used the oblique order. We crushed the enemy. And here we used very advanced, admittedly, very advanced infantry tactics, and we utterly destroyed the enemy here under the same circumstances. So I appreciate you fellas. Of course, you want to subscribe if you want to see more from our channel. If you want to learn more from military history or more about tactics on the battlefield and how it applies to Bannerlord, please subscribe. Please leave comments and hit like and all that all the shit I'm supposed to tell you at this stage. I appreciate you fellas, and I will see you again next time.